Okay, now we would like to continue. Just a quick reminder, I've just mentioned that there is a sample exam question sheet of the Agile Tester certification that you can still return to our colleagues at the Challenge Yourself booth. And
that light is bright.
There is a feedback form for the conference itself. Each and every participant has one copy. Please fill these sheet as well, this feedback form, and right after the end of this last presentation, our colleagues will collect these feedback forms. So please be so kind and fill this feedback form and hand it over to our colleagues. They will collect the forms right after this presentation. Thank you very much. Yeah, I have just said that we're going to start the last presentation of the conference, which is from a keynote speaker. I've been honored to be the session chair of the last part of this year's Hungarian Testing Board. And I have the privilege to introduce Tauhida Parveen, our keynote speaker. Tauhida has been here to Budapest last year already at the General Assembly of ISTQB, and we consider this as a sign of confidence that she returned as a speaker this year. It's great news to every one of us. Thank you very much. She has been introduced in the conference program guide already, and she will start with a short introduction as well in her presentation. And last but not least, we have learned a couple of special characteristics yesterday at the beginning of Lee's presentation about Tauhida. So I do not want to tell any more, but welcome her and hand over the mic. Please start. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, everyone, for being here today. And I was told that I'm supposed to capture the audience. So it doesn't matter whether you like me or the talk, you have to be in this room because we're going to gather the metric and it's going to be the number. The number of people in the room tells how effective the talk is. So I'm really honored to give this talk basically as a closing talk for the conference because I actually get to use all the other talks as reference, and I think that's just amazing. I can make fun of you, some of the speakers who have spoken before, or I can make good comments about you, and you wouldn't know that until, I actually finish the talk. So I'm here today, and you can read my bio on the program, on the conference program, but let me give you a quick introduction of myself. I play a lot of roles. Right now, I'm in academics. I actually battle with faculty and students for a lot of things. For teaching courses, I teach them myself, but I battle with my faculty for things like parking spaces and classes that they either do or don't want to teach, which is actually fun. I was in industry for a very long time, and I decided that I couldn't handle the inflexibility a lot. So, and I would create all this, I would have these great ideas and I would give them to my manager or my director, and they said, wonderful, great work, move on to the next project. We are not gonna implement that. And I felt very frustrated. So I went and became a consultant because I thought I could go to industries and I could give them my great ideas and then I could leave. And what they do with it is not going to be my problem anymore. So I did that for a while. Then I came to academia, and I really like it. And recently, what you don't have in the program is that I've joined a company called Future Predictive, and we train and we provide solutions for big data and cloud computing. And then everywhere the consultants went, they were asked by QA, this is great, you've given us a great solution, but how do we test these? So they came to me and said, you're gonna have to come in here and help us with testing. So that's what I will be doing, a lot of research for this company on big data, cloud computing, and kind of being the bridge for software testing and connecting the two areas. Why am I here today? Or more importantly, why are you here today? I'm sure almost all of you have heard of cloud computing, so you're interested in it. I'm here to tell you that cloud computing is here to stay. It has sort of established its position, and it's going to stay here probably for a very long time. It is changing the way we engineer software today. Therefore, I think we, as testers in the testing community, are in a very good position to actually use this to our benefit. I like to start all my talks with the Dilbert cartoon. And some of them are, the reason I do that is because actually the real life is very much like Dilbert. So here is your Dilbert of the day. What am I going to talk about today? I'll talk about what cloud computing is. I'll give you an overview of cloud computing. And you may already know this, but this would be my view of how I see things. I will also talk to you about how cloud computing itself is different from traditional computing. So that's not related to testing. But I want you to think about testing when I actually describe these. We'll talk about what testing in the cloud is. And what does it mean for you, and what to do next? Where do you start? What do you do? Cloud computing is not new. I know some of you, my students, think it's new, but it's not. It's been around, the idea has been around for a very long time. In the 1960s, John McCarthy, who's the founder of artificial intelligence and founder of the programming language Lisp, he has basically, this was his speech. He thought that the way he saw computing at that time, one day, that computing power is going to be basically given to everyone as an utility. Just like you use your water and your electricity. You don't have a gigantic, power plant beside your house. You basically rent it. You pay for the amount of time you use, the amount you use, the amount of electricity you use, and the amount of water you use. So his vision was, at that time, computing would, at some point, be like that. In the 1960s, we liked the idea, but we didn't have the facility to actually implement that idea. So the idea kind of went, was swept under the carpet until the 2000, when all of a sudden we found out that big data. Well, what is big data? We found out that every single thing you do on the web leaves footprints. And we found out that we can actually use that footprint. If I'm a business, I can use that to my benefit. Because if I see you looking for cars, maybe I can push some car accessories towards you. And the power of something being in front of your face is very, very important. So when we found out the power of how much data we have, we figured out, well, the first thing we need to do is we need to extract information from that data, because that data is unstructured and that data is raw. So that need gave us the opportunity to come up with ways to basically process that data. Well, we came up with the processing power, but then we also need the infrastructure, because we cannot sequentially process that data. We need a huge infrastructure to distribute the data to process it. So then we said, well, let's call it cloud. Let's not build gigantic data centers. Let someone else do that for us. And maybe we can just borrow the computing power, the computing instances from them, and then we can process our data. So something So that's how big data, cloud computing actually became so popular. So it's not a new idea, it's an old idea, and I call it, it's an old idea whose time has finally arrived. So what is cloud computing? Virtualized hardware. Somebody will buy a bunch of physical hardware, and then we will create virtualized instances, which will basically replicate it, and then we'd make it huge, and then push it out to you. So it's virtualized. It is a service-oriented architecture, which means that you are getting the service. You're getting the computing service. You don't own the infrastructure. On-demand utility model, pay as much as you use. When you don't use it, shut it off, right? Multi-tenancy, self-healing, rapid elasticity. These are some of the benefit that comes with this infrastructure. It's not in your control in most of the time, depending on who you are. If you are the user of it, then yes, it's not. You're depending on someone. Just like electricity, you're depending on someone else. In Florida, we get a lot of hurricanes, and then we're at the mercy of people who are fixing all the power generator. We could be out of power for days. So it's not in your control, but at the same time, things are kind of taken care of. When my electricity is out, I just wait there. I don't run anywhere and try to fix anything. So same thing, that's the model. Some of you may already know this. By the way, I have a question for you. Who here is not from Nokia? And from Ericsson? Not Nokia and not Ericsson. Okay, good. So I do have a small pool of people who may be interested in this. The reason I say that is I've seen some great presentation from Nokia and Ericsson today and yesterday on test automation as a service, on automation as a service, on cloud as verification environment. Those are great, and I champion you guys for doing that. That is the next step. That is the evolutionary testing. But not everyone is Ericsson and Nokia. So I guess I'm here for the people who are not Nokia and Ericsson. How's that? So cloud services. In general, there are three. First one is software as a service. So one of the conference chair was talking to me today, saying how in the last couple of months he have used Google Docs to communicate with all of his PC members, right? All the communications were done there. In fact, the notifications were sent to him. By the time someone called him and told him, by the way, there's something waiting for you, it was done. So he was using software as a service. He could access it from anywhere, from his car, from sitting anywhere. Things were pushed to him. He didn't have to buy it. It didn't reside on his desktop. He needed only a thin client, a browser, to access it and do all the work that 10, 15 years ago we used to do sitting at a chair on our desktop. The next one is platform as a service. So imagine you don't have a certain operating system or the applications to do your work. Classic example, I'm a Mac user. I don't have a lot of access to Windows platform. So I could buy a bunch of Windows machine and let them sit in the corner of my house and use them when I need. And then, of course, in about 3 years, they'll probably be obsolete, and I'll have to donate it to a school and then buy new ones. Or I can rent the platform as a service instance from some other company and use them as I need them. So here, you get your virtual servers, but you have to provide your own operating system and your application that you want to develop application on the platform that you want. The next one down is infrastructure as a service. So this is where you are actually getting virtualized instances, okay? Down to the bare bone, the hardware, but they're virtualized. It has three delivery model. Public, private, and hybrid. And yes, there are some other ones now, community and such, but I'm going to stick to these three, the classic ones. How do they work? So suppose Nokia today, hopefully after a lot of research, came up with the idea that they're going to create a gigantic data center somewhere in this country. They're going to use it for their internal usage, which is great. And then after a lot of assessment, they found out that the amount of time they use this huge data center, which has physical servers there, but it has virtualized servers as well, so it is very, very scalable. There are times during the year when they actually don't use it for the purpose they built it. Well, it's kind of waste. So what do? They send out to the public and say, here, we're actually a cloud host. We have instances you can borrow, you can use. And Ericsson here thinking, well, we could build our own data center, but why don't we just try it out first? So the things that we can actually deal with security and privacy, maybe we should just use the public cloud that Nokia is presenting to us to do some experiment and see if it's for us or not. And so they can borrow those instances to do development, testing, whatever they want. So that's public cloud. Ericsson gets treated the same as I get treated and you get treated. Okay? The next one down, by the way, that's how actually, if you know of Amazon public cloud, that's how it started. Amazon did a lot of assessment and found out they have this gigantic infrastructure which was only at peak time during the holidays. So the rest of the time, it was kind of sitting there idle. So they decided that we should make money out of it. That's a business model. And then now they do. So next one down is private. So Ericsson likes what they see, but they're doing an assessment and thinking, renting is much better now than buying. So why don't we ask Nokia to actually customize their public cloud in such a way that it will give us access as if it's ours. Basically, we built it, so it's just for us. So the private cloud belongs to a single organization and its partners and its members, but it is still hosted somewhere else, provided by a cloud provider. And then there's the hybrid cloud. So there are some processing that Ericsson has to do, which needs to be in private network, but not all of them has to be that way. Some things are okay to actually publish in the public cloud. So they would have actually have a hybrid structure where they process some of their data in the public cloud, and the ones that they can push out to the public one, they would. So it helps with their scalability. So that's in a nutshell how you deliver the cloud services. So what are some of the benefits? Most of this you probably have heard before. Faster, cheaper, better. It's flexible. You can launch multiple test beds, multiple instances instantaneously. It's scalable, pay as you go, helps you with a lot of things. So those are really great. What I want you to think about is everything that you can think of today has a cloud model, has a cloud presence. So that tells you where we're going. The benefits are there, but the demand from the customer, I call that the user experience, and the cloud makes that makes the users happy. Therefore, almost everything that we knew as desktop, mobile, have a cloud presence. Does everybody know what this is? Yes? Come on. What is that? Yes. It's the Apple TV, yes? Is it as popular here as it is in the US? No, okay. Well, I want you to think about how you test this. So if you don't know what the Apple TV is, it's basically a device to stream movies, TV shows, and such. This is a newer version that just came out, I believe, a month ago or so. You have to know the history of the previous version. The previous version was just as I described. It was there to stream things. It came with a set of apps on the Apple TV that you could use. And then you could use Netflix and Hulu and HBO Go and all the other things and basically get your movies and your TV shows via streaming. This is the new Apple TV, which does a lot more than what it used to. It doesn't come with any apps anymore. You can download the apps just like you can download them on your phone. You can play games in it. Now you can actually buy the gaming joysticks and things like that to play games on this. So what started as a media to basically remove yourself from regular TV and cable TV to customized TV shows and entertainment, now it has expanded to more than that. You can actually open up any apps in this one. If you want to look for restaurants, if you want to look for anything, whatever you can do on your phone, you can do it there with a gigantic screen in front of you, in front of the TV. From a tester point of view, I want you to think how you would test this. Okay, so that's your quiz from now for the next 35 minutes. We'll come back to this. All right, so far I've talked about cloud computing and give you an idea of what cloud computing is. Now, let's talk about what software testing in the cloud. In my opinion, it lies at the intersection of three things. Software testing, which all of you are a master of. Cloud computing, which you have just heard in a nutshell. And the third one is system migration. I think anyone who's thinking about testing in the cloud should think about system migration, and they should think about the classic problems that we can have with system migration. Because in this space, I'm treating the traditional software testing as a legacy system. And when you migrate a legacy system to a newer platform, you can't just get up one day and say, I think I'm going to do this. You can't. It has to function the way it was functioning before. So it has to be a seamless transition. Stitch, I call that. It's my baby, right? Software testing in the cloud. When I think about software testing in the cloud, I think about three things. Testing in the cloud, which means you're actually using the cloud infrastructure, which includes all the infrastructure that I just talked about, the delivery models, and all the processing power that you can use in the cloud to do something else. So that's in the cloud, using the cloud technology to do better testing. Testing off the cloud would be actually testing these layers, if you are in that space, or testing the applications that are deployed in the cloud. And then the first two, doesn't matter which one you do, I believe the third one is going to follow the two, migrating testing to the cloud. Doesn't matter whether you're using cloud technologies to do testing or you're testing cloud applications, you have to think about the migration problem. So people always ask me, well, what's the difference? So I have a very nice slide here that says traditional testing and testing in the cloud. So what do you see here? Tell me, you guys are testers. Does it paint a happy picture to you? Everything is great. Scalability, better management, the system is at your reach. Everything is there. Yes, they are the benefit of testing in the cloud. I do agree with that. But this is not the whole picture. This picture is to make you happy. This picture is to make a manager happy. And now everyone can say, actually, this is the picture what most people have. And they say, ooh, great, now let's go and do testing in the cloud. But the reality is a little bit different. I call it, that's the sausage, and you need to look at the sausage factory. How many of you like sausages? How many of you have seen sausages made? It's not pretty. Sorry to say that, right? That's why we say, that's basically a phrase that we use in the US. You don't want to look how the sausage is made. So let me introduce you to 2 case studies, and then I'll give you my opinion because they were based a lot on these 2 case studies. And again, I'm not going to go in detail on these, so just in a nutshell, the first one, I used the cloud to do concurrent, which means simultaneous, concurrent execution of JUnit test cases. Most of you who has unit testing in their organization know what JUnit test cases are. So I found out that developers who create unit test cases, they create them, and it becomes a lot. And then they run them in sequential order, which actually takes a long time. So what would be better from a developer's point of view is if I could just run them and get instant feedback. Well, you have a large amount of test cases. Let's think about a number, 25,000, right? And you can run them sequentially. It will take, maybe a couple of hours, and then you get a feedback. Or what else can you do, right? You can reduce the number of test cases. Well, that's not really, we can't do that now. The other thing you can do is you can actually run them in parallel, so each one of them runs, and then you can aggregate the result, and then that will make it faster. So that's the idea we went with. So we have the test cases. Now, how do we distribute them among multiple machines? Well, we have all these technologies that processes data. We have them. So can we use them? Yes. We just have to think about it and come up with a way. So we have that. Well, now we have 25,000 test cases. Well, where do we get 25,000 machines? Because the ideal situation would be to send each test case to each machine and run them parallel, right? And then we'll be done in a minute. If every test case takes a minute, we'll be done. Well, there's this thing called cloud, which will provide us unlimited, which will actually give us 25,000 instances. So let's do that. That's what the first case study is about, is running JUnit test cases in a concurrent manner. Basically, we created our test execution environment for the first case study, and then we reused that for the second case study, which is concurrent execution of graphical user interface on an iPhone. Okay? We found it a bit more challenging. We have different iOS version. We have different orientation of the phone. We have different ways of actually communicating with the phone, right? Tap, open, close, expand. And for each thing that you do, you have to think of a scenario, right? So it's much more complex than simple JUnit test cases, which basically gives you a true-false answer. But good thing is that the Apple framework gives you a UI automation tool that you can actually create your GUI test cases for these scenarios. It still takes a long time to do that. So we have these test cases now, and then we can go back and actually use the same idea that we did before, which is I have the test cases. I've already created my execution environment, which will just take my test cases and distribute it to multiple machines in the cloud. So that's what we did for testing in the cloud. Very different than a tester launching instances and running a tool in the cloud, because a lot of these things are actually abstracted from you when you do that. So this is a very quick example of, and a very, very simple example of what went inside. It was a lot of scripting, a lot of writing code, and a lot of files calling each other. We had to create image to push it in the cloud. We had to launch image, and then we can actually think about how we're doing the testing. So there was a talk here about test environment, and I think someone said that the biggest challenge is configuration. It is the biggest challenge in the cloud, whether you're doing, in fact, for us, for testers, because I think we were not used to dealing with configuration. A lot of the time, it's given to us. Here is your test environment. Now go test. Well, this is a bit different. You're actually creating your test environment yourself. So you have to step back and think about what's going inside. You have to look at the sausage factory, whether you like it or not. And that's very important when you're actually testing in the cloud. Because if you're going to use the cloud environment, you need to use it right. So from these two projects, I've come up with a sort of a roadmap for how to do testing in the cloud, or how to even begin, how to start. And I've categorized this into three things. Management. It has to be there. Management has a lot of responsibility when it comes to testing in the cloud. Under management, managers, you need to deal with process, technology, and people. And then you have to actually come up with a strategy. And then roles and responsibility are going to change than it was before. What we call testers, we may not call them testers anymore. What we call developers, or IT, or system admin, we may not call them that anymore. And I don't think it's so much true here, the fact that you cannot consider testing as an execution-only activity. In a lot of US companies, it is still the case. Testing is considered as an execution-only activity. We get testers, we hire testers, or we outsource testing because we think that they're only going to run test cases blindly. Well, that's not going to work in a cloud space. Management, first thing you need to do is a SWOT analysis. I'm always surprised to actually see that people don't do that in testing. You do that for any business. If you were to open a business yourself right now, this is what you would do. So why is it that we don't do it in testing? We need to think about, remember I said, whether you're testing in the cloud or off the cloud, you have to think about the migration process, because you are moving from one space to another. So what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? You have to align them with your goal. What is your goal? Why do you even want to go to cloud? Is it because you've heard of it and you think it's great? Or does it really cater to your need? So suppose you have done SWOT analysis. Here's your migration strategy. Okay? The SEI has a migration framework called SMART, Service-Oriented Architecture, Migration, Adoption, and Reuse Technique. So I took that and I labeled it as SMART-T, and I came up with my own migration of testing to the cloud strategy. There are three things that I think we need to consider when you are thinking about the cloud space, and we're thinking about migrating our testing to the cloud. Our business drivers, why we want to go there. Is it just faster, cheaper, better? Is it really cheaper? What is cheaper to you? You have to consider your technical factors. And that includes the technology that's involved in the cloud space. But more importantly, what type of testing are you trying to execute in the cloud? And what are the dependencies? Can you really do that? There are certain kind of testing that cloud is not good for at all. And you shouldn't do them in the cloud. And you have to think about your test execution environment. Are you going to create it yourself? I'll tell you right now, if you're depending on a tool is not going to provide all the need that you have. So at some point, you will have to create your own execution environment. So how are you going to do that? Do you have the manpower to do that? And then the third part is your operational result. I always say you have to start small. Pick a small project, small set of test cases, and see what is the cloud like. How are your testers doing? There has to be a sync between what you do now and what the cloud offers. So here's an example. If you have never heard of what unit testing is, and believe me, there are companies I have gone and trained who has not. If you have testers who have never seen code, if you don't know, and if you don't have these already, then you're going to fail in the cloud. Because yes, you do need automation, you do need technical testers there. So then for you, maybe this is not the right time. What are you trying to achieve? Do you actually need faster feedback right now? Because that's one of the things that cloud will give you. But is that what your need is? So you have to come up with your strategy, where you are and where you want to go. And then you have to see, am I really there? Do I have some activities that actually overlaps? You have to think about the cost model. So, you heard me say multiple times, you can launch unlimited instances. It costs, the cost is not that much. But is that really true? Because each instance costs something per hour, per person. That's how the cost model is. So you have to do your calculation to see how many people is going to be using that and for how long. And that's what your cost is. So in theory, it's great. It costs about 80 cents per instance. It's good if I just use it for an hour just by myself. But if I have 20 testers who are going to be using it for 3 months, then you need to look at the cost. You have to think about cost from what it is now and then what it's going to be. And just like anything in testing, you have to think about long term. Okay? I always like to use the ABC cost model, which means basically you divide your activities and then put dollar amounts to each one of the activities and then find out how much it costs now, how much it will be, and then you project your cost. Management. Yes, you have a responsibility towards the technology that's involved in the cloud space. There are lots of them, and lots of them are coming your way, and they're really, really coming fast. So how are you going to keep up with it? How are you going to keep up your testers with that? So that's very important. I think from a technology point of view, there are 3 things that I believe are going to be very, very relevant for testing in the cloud. Testing as a service. And when I say I'm not talking about tools, I'm talking about people. So I can have a product in the cloud, and I can basically do a crowd testing. I can send it to all of you guys. But now I have a way to actually push it to you to test. And then I have to figure out how I'm going to get the good bugs from you and how I'm going to fix them. So that's one way of considering testing as a service. The other one is actually using a service, creating your test execution environment, and providing that as a service to all the testers. I believe that the distributed processing technologies that we use in the cloud to process, to basically get the benefit of the cloud space, are going to be very, very important for testing. And I think it's important that we know these technology and we use them for testing. I think it's time that because these technologies have a lot of power, and I think that we as testers are very, very talented. We think differently. We have a great mindset. So why is it that developer have all these great tools? We introduce unit testing, and guess what? We have a lot of unit testing frameworks. You know why? Because developers hate to do things that are manual. They do it once, and then they come up. Because they can write code, they put that into work, and they come up with a tool. So why is it that we cannot use these technologies to our benefit? And that's how I look at when I see testing in the cloud. My intention is, what can I use? How can I use this technology to create great facilities for testing? And then your test execution environments is going to be also very, very important. The knowledge, the learning curve. So this is, again, a picture from Amazon Web Services. So in traditional testing, we looked at and we pressed a button, we got pass, fail. Here, you have to look at this. Which machines are on, which are not on, what's happening to each instances. So when I say these are self-healing, jobs are starting automatically on their own, that's good in theory. But when you actually sit down to do it, it's more complex than that. People. So managers, you are the ones who allocate people. So when it comes to testing in the cloud, first thing you need to ask yourself is, are you pushing the cloud to your testers, or do you think that they will be able to adopt it? Do you think they'll be excited by this new technology? And if they are, then yes, that's great, because then they're going to learn. They're going to actually embrace it and find a lot of things that they can do with it. Your programmers, it's difficult to get programmers to write unit tests. Can you get them to do other things? Like maybe they have to automate the scripts for creating the environments. Do you think they have to write the code on their desktop? All programmers have their own nice little environment that they create with all the things, and then in the testing environment, things doesn't work because, oh wait, I changed that in my environment, that's why it's not working here. Well, are they going to be doing that on their desktop, or are you going to make them to actually create the applications in the cloud? So how are their jobs, their role changing? What about your system administrator? Are they the point of contact to the cloud providers? Or are your testers the point of contact? Are you the point of contact? And a lot of the gaps, how are you going to bridge them? Like training, communication skills. So those are a lot of those things to think about from a from a management process point of view. Now, let's say, in a perfect world, you have handled those. And so now, let's actually talk about the strategy. How do you come up with, where you are to where you're going to go? So a question I get asked all the time, does cloud change the foundation of testing? And my answer to that is no. If you don't know how to test, it doesn't matter. I can replace cloud with anything. You're not going to be able to test. So it does not change the foundation of testing, okay? The way we define testing, which is a process, and it requires a lot of things, planning and all of that. It does change how you implement each one of those things. That part may change, and you have to be willing to change. Does it involve new technology? Does it affect your current task? And my answer to that is yes, it will. It's not going to be the way it was before. You have to learn a lot, learn quickly, and you have to deal with the changing technology. Are there different types of testing? It depends on what you're doing, what product you're using. But yes, you have to test it's a service that you're getting. Where are the bugs coming from? What is your service level agreement? That's something you have to test, I would say. You have to read and understand. So in your strategy, you have to think about critical success factor. So what is critical success factor? And by the way, you can use them whether you're in cloud space or not. I think it's very important to use them when you're in a cloud space. So what is a critical success factor? These are basically factors that would make something that you think is good, you have a goal, and it's going to make you successful. Do you want an example? Zular, I'm going to pick on you. Let's just say just pretend for a minute that I'm you, and you're setting a goal of losing 5 pounds. It's the holidays, okay? So you're going to lose 5 pounds. Since I'm realistic, which you are realistic, and you're going to say, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months to lose 5 pounds, which is a very realistic goal, okay? Now, what would be the factors that would make that successful? Well, you can eat right, and you can exercise, okay? So, and you can come up with other things as well, but let's just say, the 2 things we come up with is you can eat right and you can exercise, and that would help you reach your goal of losing 5 pounds in 6 months. So your critical success factor is eating right and exercising. Your goal is to lose 5 pounds in 6 months. Now, do you think that you're going to continue to eat right and exercise, which most people think is painful, if you don't lose 5 pounds in 6 months? Well, one of the 2 things can happen. First of all, you need to look at it and you need to reevaluate yourself. You need to say, well, something is happening here, right? One, losing 5 pounds in 6 months is a pretty realistic goal. And if I'm eating right and I'm exercising, I'm not losing it. That means one of the 2 things is happening. Either I'm cheating and I'm actually eating cakes and stuff at night without actually telling people, right? You're actually not following the success factor that you have said are going to define your goal. You're not following them. Or there's something else is going on. Something is wrong. So either way, you have to take care of it. So you have to identify the success factors for testing in the cloud. Why did you go there? Because if you don't have them, then you're not going to know if you're doing well or not. And I think it's a big mistake people make. They say, and it happens with tools as well. We bought a very expensive tool, and then we didn't define our success factor, and now the tool is collecting dust. So same thing. You have to have that in your strategy. I like to use the balanced scorecard. It comes from business. Every business, just like SWOT analysis, has a balanced scorecard where they come up with, every year they assess financially, from a customer point of view, from internal, and from your learning and growth point of view, does your activity meet the vision and the strategy that you're using towards your vision? Does the activities that you do meet that or not? I use that for testing, and I use that for testing in the cloud. I think it's very, very powerful. You have to look at each item financially. What are your objectives? What are your measures? What are your targets? And what are you doing to meet them? I think it's very important to do that. And then roles and responsibilities. So developers, are they really only going to be limited to unit testing, or are you going to use them, extend their responsibility, and let them wear the tester's hat for a little bit longer towards integration testing? I think that we should have, that the testing role should be redefined, and we should have what's called test analysts who are going to design, who are going to plan, who are going to do all of these things that we're doing to move, to create our environment towards move to the cloud. And then we're going to have our technical test analysts, who are what we call them today as testers, are going to actually run the test cases, analyze the results. We should still have customers. They can actually reach the product better now to do testing. We should involve them even more. Our IT department, they should be the point of contact to our cloud provider. And then we should have our cloud provider to do testing as well. The services testing, the services that they're providing, they're giving us. So other than the 3 things that I just talked about, I've also learned a couple of lessons by doing, testing in the cloud space. So I've learned that my smart T works, and it actually works well in decision making. I think it's very important for us to think about our business drivers. Cloud computing is not only IT, it is business and IT. It has a business perspective and it has a technology perspective, and we should look into both of them. We should definitely have a trial migration. We should start small. Especially if you're not in the cloud space, you should definitely start small. Run small amount of test cases and see how you feel. The testing environment as we know it today is a legacy system, and I think it should be changed. You have to be okay with doing partial migration. Some test cases, some type of testing should not be in the cloud, and you should be okay with it. You management, you cannot say that we've spent all this money and we want everything. It's like we want 100% automation. It's not achievable. It's important to select your test execution environment, but in order to do that, you should know it. Configuration is very, very challenging and important. So when something goes wrong, you need to look at your configuration first. Rather than your product or your developer or your test cases, look at your configuration. The nature of your test cases, you may get false negatives, and you have to know that. Because you don't know, the bugs could be on the services that the cloud provider is providing, or it could be on your product. So, how would you test this?
Release it to the customers.
Sorry?
Release it to the customers.
Release it to the customers, and then find the bugs. Crowd testing, right? Cheaper, right? This is a very good example of testing in the cloud, using a lot of cloud technologies to test, which Apple uses, by the way, and off the cloud as well, because all your streaming, all of these are coming from the cloud, and you have to think about a lot of the network bandwidth. How do you, if you have a low bandwidth, do you still want your show to be the same? Yes. From a user point of view, you don't want to know what's going on underneath. You should be able to look at it, whether you have a, whether you're in a, what is that, dial-up line or in a broadband line. From a user point of view, it shouldn't matter. From a tester point of view, it should. Right? So you can think, I think of this as a complete end-to-end testing in the cloud and off the cloud. Okay, so I want to summarize this talk by saying that software testing is a challenging activity. If we have learned anything in the last 2 days, I hope that you have learned that it is challenging. It has a lot of branches. We have a lot of technologies today, service-oriented architecture, virtualization, cloud computing. I think it's an exciting time because we have all of these at our disposal. So I like to think of it this way. Instead of thinking cloud as a testing environment, why don't we think about how we can leverage these technology to make our testing better, faster, more efficient? And I think that's what I think as the opportunity for testing for us. You do have to plan, start early, all the good things that you've learned so far. You have to use them a lot. You have to think of your traditional testing when you move to the cloud as a legacy system, and it's going to have the problems that you have with classic migration of any legacy system. It's not a hype if that's what you're still hung up on. It provides an infrastructure to process big data. So can we think of testing as big data? Big data has 3 V's: velocity, volume, and variety. That's what big data is explained as. Can we think of testing as that? I believe so. Volume, velocity, how fast we have to test, how we're under pressure and we have to do it fast. Variety. For one requirement, how many test cases do we have? How many different ways do we test? So yes, if the cloud is providing an infrastructure for big data to solve the big data problem, then I believe if we can treat testing as the big data problem, we should be able to come up with a great solution. We should be using cloud computing to solve that problem. It is changing the testing landscape. It is changing the testing profession. It's amazing that how many people have asked me, well, we're moving to the cloud. What do we do? We're moving to the cloud. How do we test? So that's a good thing. From a tester's point of view, it's a good thing because it tells that we're very, very important. And we're going to be even more important in this space. We have seen shifts like this in the past as well. We moved from desktop to web, web to mobile. It's just now the timing is getting shorter and shorter. I believe that's the difference. So in the US, we say, if we see something very fast coming at us, we say brace for impact. Well, brace for the change in testing. I was sitting on my breakfast table reading the Wall Street Journal in November 6th, and I ran into this article. It says, where the new jobs will come from. In 2007, there were no such thing as iPhone, therefore no such thing as apps or app developers, right? It's a $15 billion industry now. So by 2011, actually. So think about the timing, right? So 10 years ago, there were no social media, no cloud services, no big data analyst. We have these jobs now. We have these titles now. So here it says some jobs in services will include Zumba instructors and retail sales, but the future is in cloud computing, cybersecurity, gene sequencing, big data projects. Why? Because we have those technologies now. So we can actually leverage them. And I can tell you for each one of those, big title, there's a room for testing. And so we should embrace that. So I am very excited about this because I feel like this is an amazing time for us to explore these technologies and change the testing landscape. What really caught my attention is this. Some jobs in services will include Zumba instructors. Well, that's very interesting. What do you think? Yes, right? That makes sense. Come on, guys. We're almost done here. Do you agree with that? How many of you are a fan of Zumba here? The room is very populated by males, but well, that's true, and I felt really good for my Zumba friends. Except for nature has its own way of, my friend back there, you're gonna have to turn the video, please. Let's go forward. Forward about 10 seconds. There we go. So, this is an avatar. It's a software. And this is released by Zumba Fitness, which is a company. This is an amazing piece of software. If you look at it, on purple, no, the purple tells you, we just have to watch it again, I guess. It's telling you the move that's coming next. And on the bottom here, it's telling you the move that you're doing now. So can you run it a little bit more? It's flawless. So I picked this one because the avatar actually looks like an avatar. The other ones I looked at, they look like real people. The founder of Zumba is Beto Perez. You couldn't tell the difference. Pause. So, if you thought that the Zumba instructors are going to have their job, it's wrong. But guess what? Do you know how we could test this? Fortunately, we are going to need a physically test this first. Maybe we can automate that as well, but you actually, it's like, telling an astronaut, you can do the simulation of, weightless as much as you want, but the real life is different. So for this one, we can still test it. So the Zumba instructors might lose their jobs, but we can still test it. This has different platform. You can download it. It's in Xbox, it's in Wii. You can download it in any of your, iGadgets that you use, and you can take it anywhere with you. So that's where our software industry is today. And all the cloud computing is just one of the technologies that's there. But there are other ones. And I hope that you are as excited as I am, and you will embrace this change and put it to good use towards testing. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Tauhida. Great presentation. Now we have time for questions. Any questions?
I think everyone is fired by the Zumba instructor.
Try Zumba? Try Zumba? No?
So, you just described us a lot of things, and one thing catch my mind. You told that you think most of the companies will use other companies' services for cloud testing. And I just thought about how they will handle the issues with sensitive data, for example. So do you know, or do you have any ideas on this?
I think if you think your data is sensitive, then you would have to move towards private cloud, just like people are doing right now. I mean, Amazon is the service provider for both public, private, and hybrid right now. But when I say people are going to be using other services, I'm talking about the small shops. So not everyone is Nokia and Ericsson or Amazon or Google. They have their own cloud services. And but for other small companies, yes, I believe they will be borrowing services from other companies. And they'll have to probably go to either a hybrid model or a complete private model.
Thank you. Thanks. Any more questions? Okay, then. Thank you very much again. Great.